What's up everybody, it's Matt from Peter Glenn, and in this video we're going to show you the first things that you should look at when you're buying a new wakeboard. Let's check this out. So when it comes to wakeboards, there's a lot that go into these things, not just inside the board, but on the outside of the board and the shape of the board. And a lot of the stuff that you can see just by looking at the board, and they make them ride a certain way. Now, if you're a little bit higher end rider, you're gonna have a very specific riding style. But even if you are more of a beginner, intermediate, you have an idea of what sounds best to you for your riding style. And knowing these little things can make a big difference when you're trying to find a new board. We will leave some links in the description down below to some videos that go a little bit more in depth to some of these things like the rockers and the park and the boat boards and all of that stuff if you want to go a little bit more in depth. But in general, this can basically give you a good idea on what to look at when you are looking for that specific board. So right off the bat, the first thing you want to ask yourself is, where am I riding? Are you riding behind a boat or are you riding in a cable park? If you're riding behind a boat, there are very specific boards for riding behind a boat. If you are riding in the park and you're hitting those jumps and those rails, or if that's just where you're learning to ride, having one of these cable boards can actually be a big advantage. But once you ask yourself that question, that's literally gonna split the boards in half, because half of the boards are gonna be park boards and half of them are gonna be boat boards. And then from there, a big thing that we always see is the different rocker types. And this is something that you are gonna be seeing in the park boards and in the boat boards, and that's basically the bend of the board. If you have a continuous rocker, that's a board that's gonna be a little bit easier and smoother feeling in and out of your turns, whether you're behind the boat or you're in the cable. But more importantly, when you're behind the boat, as you're coming off the wake, it's gonna have a little bit smoother, easier pop. And then from there, there's 3-stage rocker boards. Those are boards that are rockered with some flat in the middle, and that's gonna be something that's gonna be a little bit more aggressive in and out of your turns, again, behind the boat or in the cable. And then when you are hitting that wake behind the boat, it's gonna give you a little bit more of a kicking, bucking style pop off of the wake. And then there's boards that have hybrid rockers, which is a blend of both. It kind of gives you the best of this and the best of this, but one of these three is actually not better than the other. It's just a personal preference. And then going from that board shape from tip to tail, we can actually look at the tip shapes of the board in general too. Some boards are gonna have rounder shapes on the tips. Some of them are gonna have flatter shapes on the tips. Now the big thing with those is that the rounder the board is, the easier it's gonna come off of the wake and the softer it's gonna land. If you have a harder shape, that's gonna hit the wake all at once, and that's gonna give you a little bit harder kick off of the wake, and it can be a little less forgiving on the landings. And then there's some boards that have a little bit more of a diamond shape to the tip or a little bit more of a swallowtail. And both of those are basically taking a board, making it longer and giving it some benefits of a longer board, but it still has the feel of a shorter board. And then just like with the rounded nose, the diamond tips are gonna have a little bit more of that smoother, easier feel, and those swallowtails are gonna have a little bit more of that abrupt feel. And then going to the sides of the boards, and this is something that you can't see as much when you're online. This is more when you're in the store, but you kind of look at the edge of the board. It's basically that spot where the top sheet meets the base of the board. Now, some of these rails, they are a little bit more rounded off. That's gonna have a little bit easier, more forgiving catch-free feel. If that edge is a little bit harder, that's something that's gonna wanna dig into the water a little bit more and be a little bit more aggressive, but it is gonna be a little less forgiving. Also, you can have a variable edge. You can have a board that actually has a little bit more of a rounded edge in between your feet, but as you get towards the tips, it gets a little bit harder. So it's something that it's a little bit more forgiving when you're standing on it flat, but when you lean back on it to carve, it really helps dig in. Again, one's not better than the other, it's just personal preference. And then going to the bottom of the board, you can look at a lot of the fin setups too. Some boards are gonna have those molded in fins with a removable center fin. You might get 2 removable fins. You might get 2 molded in fins with no center fin. You might get just a center fin. The big thing to remember is that a board that has more fin is gonna have more hold. Usually your more beginner to intermediate style boards are gonna have the molded in fins with that central fin that is removable if you want it to have that little bit looser feel. And some of your higher end boards are gonna have smaller molded in fins on the outside, or they might have 2 removable fins because that rider isn't concerned so much with the hold. They're a little bit more experienced and they know how to use their edges a little bit more, because if you use your edges properly, you actually don't even need fins. They're just there to help check you a little bit on your landings. And you're gonna want a little less fin because that's something that can hold you in when you're trying to pop the board out of the water. So again, 9 times out of 10, higher end boards for higher end riders, they're gonna have a little less fin, and those lower end boards for those more beginner riders, they're gonna have a little bit more fin. And then with all of that said, when it comes to the shapes and everything on the board, another thing that you can look at is the price. If a board is less expensive, it's gonna have less inside of it. It's probably gonna have a little less shaping, and it's probably gonna be for a little bit less experienced rider. Now, as you get up into those higher end boards, they're gonna have higher end constructions. They're gonna have more stuff inside them, like carbons and things to actually give them a little bit more snap, a little bit more pop, a little bit more speed, something for that higher end rider. Those really expensive boards are not for beginner riders. If you are a beginner and you jump on one of those things, yeah, you might be able to get up on it, but the minute you tip that thing on edge, it's probably gonna take off on you, and you're gonna be wishing you had something a little bit slower and easier feeling underneath your feet. But the cool thing is, no matter what skill level rider you are, when you are looking at the boards, you can kind of take these things and you can take it like a puzzle and kind of put them together. You could say to yourself, you know what, I kind of like the idea of the 3-stage rocker to be a little bit faster and give me that kick off of the wake, but I don't want it to be super hard kicking, so you can look for something that has a 3-stage rocker, but has a little bit more of a rounded tip and tail. Also, you could be looking at something that has a little bit more of a variable edge along the side, so it's a little bit more catch-free and looser feel there, but has a little bit more fins to help hold you in on the tips and the tails. And you really just kind of take all of these things and kind of piece them together and look at the descriptions and look at the shape of the board, look at the pictures, and really find that one board that's gonna fit your needs the best. But if you got any questions about anything that we talked about in the video, definitely leave some comments down below. We're on there every single day trying to answer your questions. We wanna make sure we can get you into some rad gear, but most importantly, we wanna make sure that it's gonna fit you and it's gonna fit your specific riding style as well. Also, make sure to like, subscribe, and definitely get that notification bell on too so you can find out when all the new videos drop, and head on over to peterglenn.com. Check out all the boards, check out all the specs, check out the shapes, find that one board that fits you and your riding style the best, and get out and ride, because any day riding is a good day riding.